Hey, Phil.
My Skype will not load up. I don't know what's wrong.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so this is not working. And I don't know quite how to fix it because it just won't let me get online.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. So this is the only way we can. Wait a minute. No, it's the same thing. It gets my password, but then it won't let me. It just spins.
Okay.
So what should we do?
We can try it over the phone, or we can reschedule if you like.
Well, over the phone is fine with me. Although I had some visuals I wanted to share with you. So why don't we do something over the phone now, and maybe we can set up something more sophisticated later if I can solve this problem. Okay?
Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me.
All right, hold on. I'm going to put you on speakerphone here.
Okay. Hello.
All right, good. Now I'm on the speakerphone, so we can talk. Hello.
Well, how are you doing today, Phil?
Well, not so good because I couldn't get to see you.
Well, I'm sure we can set something up for another time.
Yeah. Other than that, it's cool here this morning, which is good because I understand the rest of the country is baking. How are you guys in Bloomington?
Oh, we're pretty hot over here.
Yep. Well, that's it. See, and we've had a heat wave, and now it seems like we've got some more what they call ocean overcast this morning. So it's cool and nice.
Well, I'm jealous.
Yeah. Well, anyway, we're my wife Melinda Peterson and I are preparing for a trip to Dublin, Ireland, to perform in a 1 hour radio piece, which will be presented before the crowd at the Science Fiction WorldCon convention there.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I know it is, and so that's the most exciting thing that's happening right now. Although I will be turning 79 on July 28th, so next week I'll be 1 year older.
Well, happy birthday!
Thank you very much. The big 7-9. So what can I do for you? What would you like to know about?
So I have so many really good questions here, and my first question would be that you have done so many voices for movies, TV shows, and video games, and I was hoping to know what it was like to provide voices for those projects.
Well, that's a very big question. I've been doing it for, let me see, I guess I started using my voice professionally back in like 1962 after I graduated from Yale. My first job was on a soap opera called The Edge of Night in '62, and my agent called me up one day. She knew that I spoke Russian because I'd been to the Soviet Union with the Yale Russian chorus, and so I went in to do a voiceover job, my first voiceover job, for a documentary about the Second World War. And what they wanted was someone who could speak with a Russian accent and maybe do a little bit of Russian, speaking Russian. So I went in, and they gave me the lines and everything, and I read them a couple of times, and I think I spent maybe 10 minutes in the booth, and then I walked out, and the director gave me this contract, and I signed it, and I had made like $360 in 10 minutes, okay? And I went, this looks like a good way to make a living, okay? So I pursued it, and basically nothing happened pretty much until I got out to Los Angeles with a show called The Amorous Flea, which is a musical comedy that I was doing, that I won a a Theater World Award for that was presented to me by no less than Paul Newman. So that was a thrilling moment. Anyway, when I got out here to perform in this play, there were a couple of back and forths. I went back to do a Broadway show, and a whole lot of crazy things happened. But eventually, I met up with a friend of mine from Yale, then Peter Bergman, and Peter Bergman was doing a radio show. So I went down and I appeared on the show, and I met these two other guys, Phil Austin and David Osmond. Mm-hmm. And before we knew it, we discovered we were all fire signs. I'm a Leo, two Sagittarians and an Aries. And Peter Bergman formed a comedy troupe called the Oz Fireside Theater. So all of a sudden, I was doing voices on the radio on a regular basis and creating characters and writing material with these guys. So from that, eventually I said, well, I'm going to exploit this. So I put together a tape, which is what you did in those days, a cassette, with the help of a friend of mine that demonstrated my different voices, my regular announcer voice and my real talking voice, and on various characters, you know, how that, and things like that. And before I knew it, I got an agent. And that's when things started to really take off. So, but the first animation job that I did out here was for the Smurfs, okay, over at Hanna-Barbera, which was, as you may know, a big cartoon factory at that time, okay, in the Valley. And I went in for my first recording session. They cast me as a character called King Gerard, all right? Mm-hmm. And I had a robot Smurf called the Clockwork Smurf, which I interacted with a great deal. And so I walk into this room and to record, and it's filled with stars and people that I really love, like Jonathan Winters and the like. And so we all sat around in a circle with microphones and scripts, and the way that they did it over at Hanna-Barbera was like a radio show. Mm-hmm. We would read through it once, and then we would read through it and record it, and then, so everybody's working together, and then we would do pickups afterwards. If there are any lines that they wanted us to do over, we call those pickups, and so we would individually do our pickups, and then they would cut it all together into what they call a radio show, and that's what the animators would make the cartoon from. Now, that technique was not universally used in the recording of animated cartoons. Other people, like when I did the Rugrats for 14 years, mm-hmm. we would very often, because not everybody was available to get together on a certain day, we would go in and record our lines individually or in partnership. Like maybe I go in with Jack Riley and we do a scene together, or I go in alone and do a scene, and then Jack would go in and add his lines later, depending on who was available and what the demands of the scene were. Okay? Mm-hmm. And that's generally speaking the way that they do animation, the most efficient way to do animation. Now, when I started doing films, my first animated film job, actually I did a couple of them for Disney. Mm-hmm. I did a goofy sports cartoon once. There was a guy named Dale Sitters who was working at Disney and coming up with these very clever ideas. Right. And somehow I got connected with him. Maybe it was just through an audition, I don't know. But I did a bunch of things for him back before I got involved in the major animation films. A woman hired me as part of a group to add voices to the Rescuers Down Under.
Oh, wow.
Walt Disney Studios, okay? Mm-hmm. That was my first major animation job, major motion picture animation mm-hmm. job. And the second one was Beauty and the Beast, okay? Oh. And Beauty and the Beast actually used CGI, computer animation, for the first time on a big screen animated feature. The ballroom scene, do you remember that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, and so I played the wardrobe and, I don't know, various other crazy parts in that.
You in the wardrobe?
Well, yeah, when he jumps down on somebody or something. Anyway, I did the voice of the wardrobe and
Wow.
various other characters. I mean, ever since I've had such a long career and I've done so many different voices, it's a little hard to remember everything. If you go online to my IDMBB page, whatever that thing is, that movie page,
yeah,
you'll see they list almost everything that I've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and sometimes I have to go and take a look at that and say, oh yeah, I remember doing that cartoon. Oh yeah, because I did, when I was with Hanna-Barbera, I did the Jetsons, and I did Little Richie Rich, and I did the Flintstones, and I did, everything that they were turning out, I ended up playing some character on. Okay, so but those were one shots. Anyway, back to the movies. After Beauty and the Beast, the animation business really started to take off, and John Lasseter and Pixar became a fixture, and they did their work over at Disney before Disney actually bought them. And so I got to work on Toy Story 1 and A Bug's Life and Toy Story 2 and, oh gosh, all of those early Pixar movies right up to Inside Out, I've done voices for.
Wow.
And the way that you do voices in the movies is that you have a group of people like myself who are, do various voices and are talented trained in improvisation, okay? And you're in a big screening room, and with a big screen in front of you, and they project the scene that you're going to do. And most of what we did, and the way I got involved in all these, is because we would supply all the background voices and occasional little voices to the main track, which was already recorded. Like Toy Story 2, Tim Allen had recorded all his stuff, but maybe there was a scene with the soldiers where they were all following orders. Well, we became the soldiers, and then we'd become, a bunch of children playing in a playground or whatever. And then from that, they would do things like, for instance, when I did this movie Tarzan, there were some elephants in it. And so I and another fellow named Roger Bumpus, who is now Squidward on SpongeBob SquarePants.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we would both, he said, okay, you and Roger try this. So I did, I did my elephant, and Roger did his elephant. And they said, okay, Phil, you'll be that elephant, and Roger, you'll be that elephant. Okay, so we recorded our elephant voices, and they animated the elephant later to our voices. See? So it's not, sometimes you're actually putting words into characters' mouths, and lip-syncing and matching. But for the most part, you simply are reading the lines, maybe 3 or 4 times, different ways, and then in a month or so, you go back into the studio, and there you are on the screen as the elephant, okay, which is really thrilling. Oh yeah, and there's another addendum to that, which is I am the drunken French monkey in the Dr. Dolittle movies. I am a social drinker. And when I did that, I was part of a group, and it was the same kind of thing, since there were all these animals to voice. Betty Thomas, who was directing it, said, okay, Phil, you try the monkey, and I did the monkey for, and then next week they called us in again, and I was now the drunken French monkey. So all of the, and I had to, I didn't exactly have to lip sync, but I had to match my voice to the picture of the monkey on the screen. All right, doing whatever the monkey was doing.
Yep. And
then they drew in the lips of the monkey so that it would match what I was saying. And I did like 5 of the Dr. Dolittle movies as the drunken French monkey. So that was a wonderful, fun, gig to do. And again, a different technique. I have overdubbed movies from one language to another. That wonderful Japanese film called Spirited Away, Japanese anime, which won an Academy Award. I was one of the cast, and I played, among other characters, the Japanese chef. Okay, the one who's like going to cook up a salamander. I have pictures of all of these, but unfortunately, I can't hold them up to the phone. I can't see them. But anyway, that was we were actually replacing the Japanese lines with American lines. So we had to match the movement of the mouths as closely as we could in order to construct the cartoon in English. Okay, so that's yet another technique that you learn. And I've dubbed foreign films. The one kind of funny and sad story about that is there was a wonderful French film called The Visitors, many years ago. That was a smash hit for the Gaumont Studios in Paris, and it was a French film with subtitles. Well, they decided to do a dubbed version where everybody would speak English, and they hired Mel Brooks to direct it. So I was cast in that and got to work with the great Mel Brooks. And Mel said from the first day to all of us who were working on that film, he said, "I want you to do it with a French accent because it's funnier." And we all went, "Yes, of course it's funny to speak with a French accent. Of course it is." Peter Sellers and Clouseau, he's not my dog. Everything he did was very funny because of that accent. So we go in, but there was a little problem. The film a lot of it was in what is called Parisian French, very fast French with swallowing a lot of words. And they that kind of thing. And so we had to talk very fast in some instance, to make it sound the same way. So there we are speaking, matching the lips and the movements of the characters and speaking with a funny French accent fast. Well, they finished it, and they had a test screening and in Encino, and the people who came to see the movie thought we were speaking French. They couldn't understand what we were saying.
Oh, man.
And so they never released the movie, the overdubbed version. And whenever I bring that up to Mel, he says, "Well, that's my only failure. Don't bring that up." That was the only movie he made that was never successful. But anyway, that was yet another technique to replace words with your own words. And sometimes they do that with characters. I did one of the remakes of The Three Musketeers. There was a character who they just didn't like his performance. They didn't like his voice. And it was shot in Belgium or something like that. So I had to go in and revoice that character. So if you see that movie, when that character comes up, it's me with my voice disguised to sound somewhat like the actor who did it. And there's another thing called voice matching, where I was hired, for instance, to match the voice of Jack Lemmon for the airlines version of Glengarry Glen Ross. Now, you're a young woman, so you may not know that movie, but it's an obscenity-laced film. It's a very funny play that's been made into a movie, and everybody is talking. It's all these men who are talking in foul language to kind of get everybody excited. So we had to eliminate all of the dirty words and put in things that sounded like them, but were family presented, family oriented, so they could show the movie on an airplane. Okay. So I had to match Jack Lemmon's voice, and which was wonderful because Jack Lemmon was one of my heroes when I was first growing up in New York and watching live television, drama, and comedy, and I thought he was one of the best actors I'd ever seen. And so my acting style is a lot like Jack Lemmon when I do either comedy on the stage or in films or anything like that. Because I've also had, besides the voiceover career, an on-camera career. I did a movie, and these things were all kind of happening at the same time. I'd be doing the Fireside Theater, radio commercials, television commercials, cartoon voiceovers, and then I went to New York and I shot a movie by director Henry Jaglom, where I got to work with Tuesday Wells, Orson Welles, Jack Nicholson, and many other wonderful actors.
Oh,
and
wow.
the film is called A Safe Place. It's a bizarre movie. We shot it all in the East Village. But there I was, doing an acting in a film as well. So I had this extraordinarily interesting, varied career. Mm-hmm. The one other aspect before I move on to something else about doing voiceovers is games. Okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I've done a lot of game recording, interactive games, online games, all of that stuff. And I was cast as a character that I was able to create, to help create for 4 years, called Dr. Vidic in Assassin's Creed.
Oh, I know Assassin's Creed.
Yep, well, I'm Dr. Vidic. Aspergo wants you. That evil doctor.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
For 4 years. And what they did with that was, up in Montreal, they invented a helmet which the actor can wear that captures with these little sensors mm-hmm. our facial movements as we're doing the role. Okay?
Yep.
So you're in a booth, and the lines are being projected in front of you that you're going to say, and you read the lines, 3 or 4 different ways until they're satisfied. But the camera is capturing what your face looks like as you're acting it. And then they take that and they lay the character's face over the actor's face. So all of the expressions, facial expressions that you see in Dr. Vidic, that's me acting. So that's an interesting technique. But now with the advent of online games, I've had a couple of other interesting opportunities. They brought back the Dr. Vidic character to be the host of an online gaming competition. This is about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so I went in and I recreated my character in the context of, people who were either winning or losing. You did very well in that round, Bob, Now, see if you can reach the next level, that kind of thing. Or, oh boy, that was terrible. Good try, but you're finished. That kind of thing. Interactive nonsense. So all of these opportunities afforded me a lesson in how to use my voice talent in new and different ways. Okay, and
yep.
it's I still do some work like that. But I heard an interesting thing because I'm Howard on the Rugrats, which most people know me for, and I get fan mail from all over the world. Is that how we connected? I can't remember. Did you send me a fan letter or something?
Yeah. With Rugrats, I know you best for.
That's right. Yeah, Rugrats, and I've got like last week. I got requests for autographs from Indonesia. And, let's see, Russia, Germany, and Brooklyn. It's like that. And I send I had been sending postcards out, autographed postcards.
Yep.
But it's gotten so expensive that now, if I get, somebody from Canada even who wants an autograph, I'll take a picture of the postcard. I'll sign it to them, take a picture of the postcard, and send it to them electronically, and they can print it out if they want to add it to a physical collection. And that seems to be fine. People seem to be happy with that. Mm-hmm. But if it's somebody in the States, I'll physically send a postcard out. But last year I was excited to hear that they announced they were going to do 26 more Rugrats, new episodes, and a CGI movie. And I thought, well, that's just great. We'll all get a chance now to recasting the entire show with younger voices.
Oh my gosh, are they really?
Yeah, that's what I heard. So there'll be like a millennial cast. I think what the producers want to do is to reintroduce Rugrats to a new generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, which is all right, because all of those that we did, we did, 14 years of shows, they'll still be rerun and everything, so far as I know. And so we'll all benefit from the reinvigorated Rugrats. And who knows, maybe they'll cast us in other roles, besides the roles that we did originally. So it has yet to be determined. Now, there's one other way of exploiting your voice, and that's radio. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, see, the Fireside Theater started on the radio. We were doing a late show called Radio Free Oz on a listener-supported station, KPFK, here in Los Angeles. And it was on from like 10 at night to 1 in the morning. And we would improvise and do crazy, we'd pretend to be crazy characters and everything. And then we took the show to a nightclub, and we performed live before a live audience every Sunday. And that show was on from 8 to 10 or something like that. Mm-hmm. And we would perform skits, funny skits as the Fireside Theater, okay? Mm-hmm. And then we got a record contract with Columbia, and we couldn't call ourselves the Oz Fireside Theater because Disney was doing a thing called Return to Oz, and they wouldn't let us use the name Oz. So we just became the Fireside Theater. Mm-hmm. And our first record for Columbia was called Waiting for the Electrician or Someone Like Him. And what we were able to do as a group, as a 4-man group, was something that no one had ever done before in the history of comedy. And that was, we created what we would call a long-form comic story, so that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's filled, we would layer it with music and sound effects and other voices and other funny ideas. So it was a little bit like reading Mad Magazine. Mm-hmm. There are all kinds of hidden jokes in the panels, and there are all kinds of hidden jokes in our records. And so Waiting for the Electrician or Someone Like Him was the first shot at that. And afterwards, of course, they didn't know what to do with us. So there was this one guy, one of the students at Columbia, who recognized that what we were doing was trailblazing. And so he signed us to a spoken arts contract. Now, what that meant was that we had free studio time in exchange for a reduced royalty on the sale of our records. But having complete access to the studios whenever we wanted them gave us the chance to really develop our form of comedy, because we could sit around a table and write what we wanted to go on the record. We would then go down to a club called, which is now the Improv out here, was called the Ash Grove, and we would perform scenes from the idea, or maybe the whole record. We'd perform it before a live audience to find out what worked and what didn't and what needed to be clarified. Mm-hmm. And then we could go into the studio and start laying it down. And as we would lay it down and actually record it and hear the playbacks, we would sometimes go, well, we got to redo that. That doesn't work. Let's try something else. And so it would go through yet another phase of transformation before the final record was mixed and released to the public. So our second record was called How Can You Be in Two Places at Once When You're Not Anywhere at All? And on the flip side of that is a thing called, because the records had two sides, mm-hmm. back in our day. Yep. Okay, they would be plastic discs. Anyway, the second side was Nick Danger, Third Eye, America's Only Detective. And that was a send-up of hardcore detective, film noir detective characters, tough-talking Mickey Spillane and, all the famous old detectives. It was a parody of that that we were going to do originally as a radio series, but then we decided to put it on the record. And it became our biggest hit because people could relate to it. All of the other stuff we did was pretty surrealistic and pretty crazy, but they could relate to this detective character, and yet we could still be as silly and surreal as we were as a group in all of our writing. And that became, that was, I think, nominated, the first of our Grammy nominations. Over the years, we've had 3 Grammy nominations for various records that we did. And at Columbia, the next record was, no, that's the one that got the nomination. Don't Crush That Dwarf, Hand Me the Pliers. Okay. That was our 3rd album. We had now developed an audience because of Nick Danger, and so that became a huge hit for us. And we were dubbed, what we called the Jesters of the Rock Generation. Okay, there was a big magazine article about us, and Life magazine and Time, they all commented on us, and that album was nominated for our first Grammy. Later, about 6 years ago, the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. Announced that record, which was had a cultural effect. It was all about television. It was about channel surfing. We were predicting channel surfing. Anyway, that record was put into the Library of Congress as an historical recording. And we were flown down to Washington for a ceremony, and it was all very exciting. We had lunch at the Library of Congress. And Jimi Hendrix catalog was being was going to be inducted as well, and Martha and the Vandellas it was a great experience. But then, about 5 years later, which is like 2 years ago, they bought our archives. The Library of Congress bought our archives for 5 figures, for a lot of money, and Dave Osman and I were flown down to Washington, and we performed on the stage of the Library of Congress. We did a Fireside Theater piece called The Art of Radio. So the Fireside definitely has been recognized as having had a cultural effect and an effect on comedy. Okay, we actually helped to influence the development of Saturday Night Live and all that kind of stuff. And when Sirius Radio and XM Radio were developing their comedy channels, they hired us to develop the first style of comedy channels. And we did a show there called Fools in Space, which was the first satellite comedy program. As I said, there are 4 members of the group, and David Osman lives up on Whidbey Island near Seattle, and Phil Austin lives near Tacoma. Hardly lived, he's passed away, unfortunately, near Tacoma. And Peter Bergman and I, we were working out of Hollywood. So the other guys, when we did this radio show down in Santa Monica, which was live, they would be doing it at home. It would bounce up to the satellite, come down to the studio, and we could all interact. Okay. So, and of course that album, How Can You Be in 2 Places at Once when you're not anywhere at all? Well, that's basically what was happening. You know, they were just in space somewhere, fools in space. Now, that brings up another part of, by the way, if you're really interested in my story, I have a book out, and it's called Where's My Fortune Cookie? Okay? And I'll send you a copy of this, Belle. If anybody else wants to get it, you can get it through Amazon, and there is a spoken version of it that I did in Brooklyn a couple of years ago. By the same name, Where's My Fortune Cookie? And it's 5 discs, so you can listen to it in your car or in your bathtub or something like that. and what's different about the audio version that I did was that sound effects and music have been incorporated into my reading of the book, okay? So that it has elements of Fireside Theater in it. It's already won 3 awards and is up for a couple more. And I hope it'll be put up for a Grammy. We'll see what happens. But so Where's My Fortune Cookie? The title of the book comes from, I don't want to get too heavy about this, but at a certain point in the Fireside Theater's career, Peter Bergman and I decided that we wanted to team up and go out and play clubs and colleges and other venues, stage venues, and the other 2 guys didn't really want to do that. First of all, Phil Austin doesn't like to fly, didn't like to fly, although he's flying now in another world. He didn't like to fly, so that wouldn't work for him. When the Fireside Theater toured, for instance, David and Peter and I would fly into a venue, like, say, New York, and Phil Austin, okay, let's say we played in Chicago, then we'd fly to New York. Phil Austin and his wife and his dogs were in a van that they drove, and they would drive to New York in time for the rehearsals and the shows, okay? So we had to really design our Fireside Theater tours around how long it took Phil Austin to get to the gig, okay? But with Bergman and me, we could go anywhere. So we played up in Canada a lot. We played all over the country. And one particular gig that we did was up in San Francisco, like 1975, I think it was. And that morning, I learned that my second wife, Barbara Sennings, who's Norwegian, was pregnant with my daughter. And so she was going to come up to San Francisco with us, but she said, no, I'm just going to stay home and think about, our future. And I said, absolutely right, Barbara. So I fly up to San Francisco with Peter, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, I'm going to be a dad. Oh, my God. And we perform at this club up there, and a friend of ours wants steaks out for dinner. And to make a long story short, you can read all about it in the book, Where's My Fortune Cookie? To make a long story short, we ended up in a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, because it was late. It was like 2 in the morning, called the Golden Dragon. And just as I'm bending over my second bowl of soup, I hear bang, 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 crash, crash, scream, and stuff is flying over my head. And I look up, and there's 3 guys with nylon stockings over their faces, 3 Asians. And one of them has a machine gun, one of them has a pistol, one of them has a rifle, and they're shooting people.
Oh, my God.
Okay? So I dropped under the table. Well, there's, a steel support under most of these restaurant tables. I got behind the steel support, and I thought 2 things. I thought, well, I'm either going to live or I'm going to die. And there's a lot more responsibility with living and a lot less responsibility with dying. So, but luckily, I ended up alive, and and my daughter's now 41 years old, and I have 2 grandkids. All right, but both Peter and I got out of there fine. But our friend Bill Alexander, he was shot, and not seriously enough to really wound him badly. But he still carries a machine gun slug behind his knee. Okay, from that shooting. But here's the funny part. That shooting was predicted by a psychic friend of mine about a month before it happened. Her name was Sharon. And the whole story's in the book. It's really bizarre. But she told me, she said, you're going to be in a shooting. Foreigners are involved. People will be killed and wounded around you. It'll be after a performance, but you and Peter will be all right. And absolutely, that's exactly what happened.
That is insane. I cannot believe that.
Yep, it is insane. And actually, my book, Where's My Fortune Cookie, available at Amazon, co-authored by Brad Schreiber, a friend of mine, who actually encouraged me to write my story, is filled with all kinds of strange, unbelievable psychic occurrences. My whole life has been like that, and still is like that. I have a kind of a telepathic sense and an empathetic sense, and that's one of the aspects of the Fireside Theater. All of us shared in common a futurist's view of the world, a predictive view of the world. And that's why our albums are still pertinent. People can still, listen to them, and they sound absolutely modern. The best example of that is our fourth album was called I Think We're All Bozos on This Bus. And that album predicted the computer revolution. Okay? Now, I'm going to turn on my iPhone, and I'm going to say something to Siri. Here we go. Okay. This is Worker speaking. Hello.
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I can't do that.
No, sorry, Siri. I'll do it again. Here we go. Come on, Siri. Come on, Siri. Come on, she's sleeping right now. Siri, wake up. I can't believe it. Siri, she's hiding from me. Hold on. This is Worker speaking. Hello.
Hello, Clem. What function can I perform for you? LOL.
Now, that's a line from our album. I think we're all bozos on this bus. Okay? I am Clem. I play a character named Clem. And when I talk to the computer, I hesitate. It says, state your name, please. I go, Clem. Hello, Clem. What function can I perform for you? This is Worker speaking. Okay. The plot of that record was that I'm a worker that's been fired from like a Disneyland, a modern Disneyland with holograms and all kinds of rides and things that has been set up by the government to keep everybody happy. Okay, and I go in and I become a hacker. What we were predicting was hacking a computer and planting a virus, because that's what I do. It's not called hacking, and it's not called planting a virus, but I use that code. This is Worker speaking. Hello, and it opens Dr. Memory, direct readout memory, and I ask the computer a question that it cannot answer with a yes and a no, and it blows up, and the whole illusion of the fair disappears. Now, why is that line? This is working. Why is the line? Hello, Clem, blah blah blah. And Siri said, why is it there? It's there because Steve Jobs was a big Fireside fan.
Oh my gosh!
Okay, and we helped to inspire him, I guess, through our album to think of the future of what computers could be. and again, it's a complicated story, but when I was doing A Bug's Life, we had a big cast and crew party up in San Francisco. And Steve Jobs had just bought into Pixar because he's going to help them with all of his computer expertise to make their movies. And I met him, and he said, I'm a big fan of yours. I said, well, that's great, and I didn't think much more about it until the Library of Congress bought our archives a couple of years ago. So we went into our storage space here and went through all of our pictures and all of our master tapes and all kinds of stuff to send to Washington, D.C. And we found a contact sheet of a record signing that we had done up in Berkeley back in the 70s. And guess who was standing with us for a picture? Steve Jobs. Young Steve Jobs. So he really was a fan of the Fireside Theater.
That's awesome.
I know. It's amazing. Anyway, as I say, if you're interested in the book, it's not expensive, and it's available on Amazon. They'll ship it right out, and it's a great read.
I look forward to reading it.
Say what?
I look forward to reading the book.
Absolutely. I'll send it off in the next week or so. So let's see. I think I've covered a lot of the stuff. Do you have any other questions?
Actually, you pretty much answered everything I had on my questions.
Good. Let me see if there's any aspect of this crazy business I haven't touched on. Oh, yeah. I was talking about radio. One last thing. There's a show called Adventures in Odyssey. You ever hear about it?
It sounds familiar.
Yep. Adventures in Odyssey has been on the air for maybe 20 years. It's I guess it could be best described as a comedic, a Christian soap opera. Okay, family-oriented soap opera for young people primarily. So all of the characters on the shows are exaggerated. You know, they had funny voices, and the kids, they had kind of funny characters and all that. And I play a detective, called Detective Polehouse, and I played a lot of parts on this thing over the years. But that's my recurring character right now, and I'm up for an award for Best Actor for one of the episodes that we did last year called The Toy, and it's a wonderful opportunity to do radio, which we go into the studio and we're all together and we do our parts, and then back in Arizona where they put it together, they put in the sound effects and the music and all that stuff, and it's syndicated all over the world. Adventures in Odyssey. You can go to the website and maybe hear some of them. So that's been fun. And then the other thing, one other way that it's exploited, there's, in Hollywood, there's a theater that is dedicated to audio presentations. I was one of the actors hired to create a series of records based on L. Ron Hubbard's short stories and action stories when he, during the what they call the golden age of pulp fiction, when he wrote hundreds and hundreds of stories under different names for all of these cheap magazines and things. And he wrote in every genre, space, horror, detective stories, arson stories, First World War stories, pirate stories, Foreign Legion stories. He was really prolific. And so we recorded something like, I can't remember how many, 80 of his stories or something, and they've been releasing them over the last few years. But what they decided to do was to perform various ones of these stories on this nice stage that they constructed with sound effects and music added to our live performances. Okay? And, like if it's a Western, we'll put on cowboy hats, and loud shirts. And if it's a space story, we'll dress it black and they'll project. They'll have a background of a rocket ship or something. So that's a way to keep audio theater alive. And there's another group that I've worked with called Fake Radio. I was up in Portland with my wife, Melinda Peterson, doing a recreation of the War of the Worlds, Orson Welles' famous radio show that scared everybody and caused a national panic. Well, that was the last thing I did with Fake Radio. And what Fake Radio does is that they will, we will perform before a live audience with microphones and sound effects and Foley, live sound effects and all of that, and music, and it's a show. It's a wonderful show. And I also do this a lot at radio conventions. Okay? My wife and I got to do the Battling Bickersons. And the radio conventions basically recreate old radio shows from the golden age of radio. Okay? And there's another group out here called CTR or something like that. ART, American Radio or something. Anyway, there's another group out here that performs before paying audiences classic stories or adaptations of stories. Live audio theater. Okay? And so I've dedicated a lot of my time as I've got older to doing live audio theater to keep it alive. And now, of course, because the narration business has become so big, so many people are now listening, millennials particularly, listening to books on CDs or downloads. Downloading books. You can download my book too, by the way.
Okay.
My phone cookie. But it keeps the audio theater alive because it's the best way to reach your imagination. You don't have to build any elaborate sets or do any special effects or anything. You can can close your eyes, not to be driving, of course, and listen and see in your mind's eye. We used to call them, Fireside call them movies for the mind. Okay? And that's the power of the voiceover artist as well, to create a character that you can see in your mind's eye, that you can believe in, even if it's not on a big screen.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, I really appreciate the time talking to you today.
Good. I hope that other people get a kick out of this. Let me know. I'll send a book out to you soon.
Okay.
And maybe someday we can actually get Skype to work.
Yeah.
And do this live so that we can see one another, and I can hold up some pictures for you.
Yeah, I would like that.
Okay? So I'll see what happened, why I couldn't get online.
Okay.
Oh, this technical world of ours. Anyway, I'm so glad you were interested in my stories, and I look forward to talking with you again sometime.
Yeah, me too. Really great.
All right, so let me know when I can promote this. I do a newsletter, by the way, if anybody's interested, called Planet Proctor, okay? Mm-hmm. And all you have to do is go to planetproctor.com, and you can sign up for it. It's free and it's fun, and you'll also get to see what it looks like, because it's visually a really, really fun thing. Planet Proctor, if you're interested in finding out what I'm up to or staying in touch, okay?
I'll check it out.
All right. Thank you so much, Mel. And as I say, I hope we talk again someday, all right?
Yeah, it will be great, Phil. I'll send you the link to our interview later.
Great. All right. Stay cool.
You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.